Hello guys, how's it going? I hope you are all doing well. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I go into all the details of a true crime case while I do my makeup. Just before we get started, I would really like to apologise for the state of my nails right now. Half of them are falling off, they're snapping in half. It's all a bit of a mess. I really need to go and get them redone. Hopefully this will be the last video with this set. Try and ignore those. So, with that being said, for this video we are going to Manchester, England. But just before I get into the video, I feel I should give a very quick content warning that we are going to be discussing some pretty dark topics in this video, such as murder, abuse, manipulation, and affairs. So if you are at all unsure about this video or feel like it might affect you in any way, then please do feel free to click off this video. I won't be offended. I'd also like to give a quick disclaimer that all the information I've compiled in this video has been sourced from the internet, family statements and news reports, and although I research each case as thoroughly as I can before each video, and of course it is never my intention to spread misinformation or cause offence to anybody involved, please do let me know down below if you see any false information. So with that, let's get right into the case. Rahan Arshad was a 36-year-old father of three who worked as a taxi driver in a suburban part of Manchester called Didsbury. From what I could find about his social life, friends described him as being a loving family man, but also somebody who was very, very quiet and private. He just basically liked to keep his and his family's business to himself. In 1992, Rahan married his wife, Uzma. Uzma was actually from Pakistan and had moved to the UK in order to marry Rahan. Together, the two of them bought a house on Burnage Lane in Cheadleham. I hope that's how you pronounce it. I'm really sorry if I've completely butchered that, which was in a southern part of Manchester. The marriage was actually an arranged marriage, which had been organised by Uzma and Rahan's family, but they actually both seemed to get on very, very well, and it seemed to be a really good match. They'd known each other for years through their family anyway, so it seemed to all work out. So the two of them seemed to have a very happy wedding and marriage, and they actually ended up having 3 children together: Adam, who was the eldest, Abbas, and then a daughter, Henna. So in 2002, Adam and Abbas, the 2 eldest, were in education at a local school where everybody adored them. They were clearly very polite, very well brought up boys. While the 2 of them were at school and while Rahan was taxiing in Didsbury, Uzma actually worked as a beautician, which meant that Henna, who was only 2 years old at the time, needed somebody to look after her. And Uzma actually managed to get the help of Muzarat Iqbal, who was one of the family neighbours, who offered to take care of Henna while the family were all out. So around the time that Muzarat started helping out the family with looking after Henna, Uzma actually met Nazir Iqbal, who was Muzarat's husband, in the playground of their children's school. Nazir Iqbal was 41 years old at the time and worked as a delivery driver, and he and Muzarat had actually had 4 children together. And soon after Nazir and Uzma met, the 2 of them actually started having a secret affair behind the 2 of their partners' backs. For a while, they managed to keep it relatively well hidden, and Nazir seemed to have a bit of a habit of gifting Uzma things. He even gave her money to buy a new car, which is quite an intense gift. But after a while, Rahan became suspicious of Uzma. One thing that made Arshad particularly suspicious of Uzma was that quite often when the 2 of them were together, driving in the car or just together around the house, Uzma's phone would go off. And when she answered it, she would tell the person at the other end of the line that she couldn't talk right now because she was with her husband. Pretty suspicious, not really hiding it very well, if you ask me. But whenever Arshad asked her about this and kind of questioned her, she would always say that it was clients from her work, because obviously she worked as a beautician. But unsurprisingly, Arshad didn't really buy this. So Arshad continued to be suspicious of Uzma, but didn't really question her anymore, just kind of kept his suspicions to himself, until one day he spotted texts coming through on Uzma's phone, and I think you can guess who they were from. As well as being suspicious that Uzma was being unfaithful to him, Arshad was actually not the most happy with Uzma in the months leading up to discovering her affair. And this was basically because Uzma, who I said earlier was from Pakistan, had actually started to act and dress in a bit more of a Western style. So in Pakistan, there's a very specific way that women dress and act. You know, it's very modest clothing, all that kind of thing. But Uzma had started wearing things like tight trousers, tight tops, more revealing clothes, and Arshad personally thought that this was very, very inappropriate for a woman who was from Pakistan. So after Rahan discovered the text between Uzma and Nazir, he took a trip to Birmingham, which is where Uzma's brother Rahat Ali lived, and he basically showed him the texts. Rahat later said that when Rahan showed him these texts, his behaviour just completely changed. Something in his brain switched, and he turned into a completely different person. So Rahan left his brother-in-law's house in Birmingham and returned to Manchester, very, very angry. And when he got home, he confronted Uzma about her affair and actually ended up moving out of the house. So the two of them lived separately until around 2004, when Uzma's father, who was still living back in Pakistan, sadly passed away. And so Uzma, obviously wanting to grieve with her family, decided to go and visit Pakistan. And I'm not quite sure what set off this new wave of anger in Rahan, but while Uzma was away mourning her father's death, he decided that he wanted to get his revenge on her for cheating on him. So while Uzma was away, Arshad actually sold their £90,000 house on Burnage Lane and decided to take the kids and travel out to Pakistan to meet Uzma. So once they reached Pakistan, Rahan met up with Uzma, handed over the children to her, and told her that he had sold their house. I cannot imagine how Uzma would have been feeling at this point, firstly having just lost her father, and then being told that her home was gone. So once Arshad had handed the children over to Uzma, he filed fake divorce papers, and using the money that he had made from selling the house, he went solo travelling around Pakistan. Bit of a random thing to do, if you ask me. So I couldn't really find much information about what he actually got up to while he was away. There were rumours that he actually met and married somebody else, but I couldn't really find any proof that these rumours were true. And also later on, when Rahan was taken to court, he said that these rumours were completely false. So while Arshad was away, he had a bit of time to kind of think over his actions, and he basically came to the conclusion that he had made a bit of a rash mistake. So Rahan travelled back to the UK and tried to patch things up with Uzma. Uzma, unsurprisingly, was not the most happy with her husband when he returned from Pakistan. She'd had to find somewhere else to live temporarily since he had sold their house. And so Rahat Ali, Uzma's brother, was again brought in to act as kind of a moderator between the two and basically just kind of keep things civil. The first thing Arshad decided to do as a bit of a peace offering towards Uzma was to buy a new house, because obviously they didn't have anywhere to live currently. So he bought a house for £200,000 on Turves Road, which was about 5 miles away from their previous home, and he put the house in both of their names. Uzma, however, was not quite at the point where she was willing to completely forgive and forget everything that Arshad had done, so the two of them continued to live separately for a little while after buying the new house. I'm not quite sure who looked after the children during this time, whether they lived with one of their parents or whether they sort of swapped between the two, but after a few months of living separately, Uzma decided to move back in with her husband. So although the two of them were back to now living together, their problems were by no means solved. Uzma was still continuing her affair with Nazir, and Arshad actually believed that while the two of them had been living separately, Uzma had rented a council house in Manchester where she had continued to meet up with Nazir, although I couldn't find anything to actually prove this online, so I'm not quite sure about how true that is. So although Arshad very obviously still had his doubts about his wife and how faithful she was to him and how much she actually still really wanted to be in a marriage with him, he was still determined to win her back, and he actually embarked on a massive spending spree in an attempt to kind of win her over. The first thing that he bought Uzma was a brand new £30,000 BMW, and the funny thing about this is, remember I said earlier that Nazir had actually gifted Uzma money for a car. I wonder if this was Rahan's way of trying to kind of one-up Nazir, or maybe she just liked cars, who knows. As well as this new car, he also bought Uzma lots of new jewellery, lots of gold bangles. He also redecorated the house and even bought the kids a brand new computer. However, even with all these lavish gifts and all this attention being shown to her, Uzma was still not quite convinced and actually took this as a slightly worrying sign from her husband. I think she could just kind of see through it straight away and see that he was just trying to kind of buy her back. And this is where things start to get a bit worrying, because at this point she actually spoke to family and friends and stated a sort of concern about Arshad's actions, basically just said that either he had turned a massive corner and things were going to get better from now on, or he was going to kill her. I find this bit particularly concerning. The fact that they'd been married for 14 years at this point, they'd had 3 children together, but she could tell that just something was very, very wrong. I personally think that Arshad's actions around this time really spooked Uzma, because not only obviously did she tell family and friends that she was scared for her life, but also in April of 2006, Uzma and Nazir's affair came to an end. I really don't know what the situation was that caused the two of them to separate. I don't know whether it was Uzma or Nazir, but given Uzma's clear concerns for her safety at the time, I really wouldn't be surprised if it had been her. So you may think at this point that given Uzma's affair has come to an end and Arshad is very clearly making a lot more effort with his wife, things might be kind of looking like they're going to improve. But nobody could predict at this point that in only a couple of months, things were going to take a very dark turn. I really can't figure out what Arshad's thought process was following the end of the affair and during the coming months. But what we can assume, given the events that took place on the 28th of July 2006, is that his frustration turned to anger and then to rage. When the school term came to an end in late July, the 2 children were seen leaving the school smiling and talking. They were in a very good mood, and Arshad had actually recently spoken to family and friends and told them that he was taking his whole family on a surprise trip to Dubai. Arshad also told friends that he was taking them on a day trip to Blackpool the day before they were due to fly to Dubai. During the day trip, nothing really seemed to be amiss with the family. From any outsider's perspective, they would just be a very regular family enjoying a day out at the beach, and at the end of the day, the whole family travelled back home to their house on Turves Road. Little was anybody to know that in less than 24 hours, Uzma and all 3 children would be dead, and Arshad would be halfway around the world. The exact timeline of what happened after the family returned home that evening isn't actually known, but we do know that the 3 children were safely put to bed and fell asleep shortly afterwards. A little while later, Uzma also began to get ready for bed, and Arshad knew that this was his chance to carry out his plan. Earlier that day at Blackpool Beach, under the pretense of a harmless game of rounders with his family, Arshad had purchased an 18-inch rounders bat, and it was with this in hand that he walked into the bedroom that he and Uzma shared. Uzma, who had been getting ready for bed, was actually partially dressed when she saw Rahan enter the room with the baseball bat. I have no idea what would have been going through Uzma's head at this point, seeing the father of her children and also her husband of 16 years standing in the doorway of their bedroom, knowing exactly what he intended to do and having no way to escape. Uzma desperately tried to run from her husband, but Arshad was blocking the only exit from the room, which was their main bedroom door, and he caught her and struck her 23 times with the rounders bat. This attack was so violent that it killed Uzma immediately, and Rahan placed her body, still half dressed, on their bed and covered her with a towel. There's a theory that Abbas, their second-born son, who was 6 years old at the time, heard the commotion going on in his parents' bedroom and got up to see what was going on, but I couldn't really find anything to prove whether this was true or not. It's believed instead that Arshad left the master bedroom still carrying the baseball bat and walked into the bedroom which his 3 children shared. He first woke up Abbas, who was their second-born son, and told him to follow him downstairs, which Abbas did. And in his children's playroom, Arshad killed Abbas in the same way that he had killed Abbas's mother just moments before. He then returned back upstairs, leaving Abbas's body in the playroom, and retrieved his youngest child, his daughter, Henna. He placed Henna's sleeping head on a cushion next to Abbas, before beating her to death as well and placing a second cushion over her face. Finally, Arshad brought down Adam, his eldest child, and condemned him to the same fate as his 2 siblings. All 3 children were placed under bed sheets and left on the floor of their playroom. With everything having gone exactly as he planned it, Arshad moved on to the next phase of his plan. He cleaned the rounder's bat, trying to remove as many traces of evidence as he could before changing and washing his clothes and then washing himself. At 7 a.m. the following morning, on July 29th, he left the family exactly as they were, started the brand new BMW, which he had bought Uzma as a gift in an attempt to show them that there was hope for their marriage, which is kind of ironic if you ask me, and drove along the M6 towards Heathrow Airport. Here he entered Terminal 3, checked in and boarded his flight to Bangkok. Arshad had booked this flight 2 weeks in advance. He'd got it all sorted out, and so far everything was going according to plan, as it would continue to do so for almost a month as he travelled around Malaysia, Phuket and Kuala Lumpur. It was only on the 20th of August 2006, almost a month later, that alarm bells started to ring for the family's neighbours back home in Manchester. Those close to Arshad believed, as he had told them, that the family was still away on their surprise trip to Dubai, but only when they noticed a foul odour emanating from the home did they start to think that something was wrong. The neighbours actually ended up calling the police, who entered the house to find the awful scene of the decomposing bodies of Abbas, Henna, Adam and Uzma. During the month that the family had been left undiscovered in their home, their bodies had become so badly decomposed that they were almost unrecognisable and actually had to be identified through their dental records. DNA and blood samples absolutely covered the ceiling, the floors, the walls, the furniture, everything in the playroom and the master bedroom, and the bodies had actually become so badly decomposed and decayed that there was a serious maggot and blue bottle infestation in the home. Upon a search of the house, blood samples were also found on Arshad's discarded clothes and shoes, as well as on the rounder's bat, which was found in the garden shed. The police immediately cordoned off the street and the house and marked it as a crime scene, and an investigation was started. Due to the fact that he was obviously not present at the scene and nobody had seen him for weeks, Rahan Arshad became the #1 suspect. The following day, on August the 21st, the silver BMW, which Arshad had driven to the airport, was found discarded in a car park at Heathrow, and the police immediately deduced that they were going to have to take their search for Arshad overseas. 9 days after the car was discovered, Arshad was located at the border between Thailand and Malaysia, and on the 30th of August, he was arrested by Thai police. Arshad willingly agreed to return to the UK, and within minutes of disembarking his flight from Bangkok, he confessed to the 4 murders of his wife and children. It was very clear that Arshad had this underlying hatred for Uzma. He didn't regret his actions in the least. He even said that he was glad that his wife was dead, but he did say that he regretted killing his 3 children as well. On the 13th of May 2017, Arshad appeared in court in Stockport and immediately retracted his confession. He instead claimed that on July the 28th, he had returned home after a fight with his wife and discovered that she had killed all 3 of the children. He said that when he ran upstairs and found Uzma, she began to taunt him, saying that she had killed their children, which then provoked him to kill her. His explanation for the pre-booked flight to Thailand was that he had planned to take himself on a solo holiday to get a bit of a break, but he hadn't told Uzma because he was worried that she wouldn't let him go. The jury, however, took 2.5 hours to find Arshad guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Arshad has still refused to show any sign of remorse for his actions, and he also refuses to answer police questions. When asked to speak to the press, Uzma's ex-lover Nazir Iqbal said that he felt no responsibility for what had happened and that it just had nothing to do with him. Anyway, that is all I have for you on this case. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to let me know down below, and also let me know if there are any particular cases you would like me to cover. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.